Welcome back. You never know where life is going to take you. DJ Skelton is a former high school wrestler from Elk Point, South Dakota, now lives in California. And it's the 20 years in between those two homes that have made for one incredible life story. Here again is David Brown.
There are thinkers and there are doers. And in the irony of all ironies, it was a Chinese general's thought and not action that has guided philosophy for generations. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu posited that every battle is won or lost before it is ever fought.
Every day of my life is just another day that shouldn't have been, but is. So I might as well make the most of it.
DJ Skelton is obviously a thoughtful man, but the amount of physical pain and labor he's endured over the last decade plus are a testament to his call to action. Introspective yet reserved, DJ was surrounded by an idyllic childhood in the small town of Elk Point, South Dakota.
One of my earliest vivid memories was the week that we moved here. There was this street fair downtown Elk Point, and everybody was just so friendly, and through the rest of that summer, you could walk around town without your parents. You could, get on your bicycle and cruise around, and there just was this instant intimacy that came with living in a small town.
In high school, DJ became a multi-sport athlete, but he loved wrestling the most, where he shattered several school records.
The battle is with yourself, right? You may have an opponent, but you don't have anyone else to rely on at that moment.
DJ thought he could rely on himself to figure out what came next, but he didn't go to class in his first semester at the University of South Dakota, and he was effectively kicked out of school.
Part of leaving USD was this introspective of, I had no discipline, I had no inner discipline.
After working odd jobs around Elk Point, the thought of expanding his boundaries beyond South Dakota's borders quickly turned to action.
I went into an Army recruiter. It was not by choice that it was Army. It could have been any branch of service. My understanding of the military is very limited. So I went to Sioux Falls, I went to the mall, and just walked into the first recruiter that I saw. It happened to be U.S. Army, and essentially grabbed a piece of paper out of the printer and signed it and gave it to the recruiter and said, get me out of South Dakota.
DJ went from South Dakota to South Carolina for basic training. After that, he went across the country to Arizona and California to study Chinese and become an interpreter. The change in scenery also changed DJ's attitude, and his hard work was noticed by his superiors, who asked him to become an officer.
You had to figure out how to dig deep inside and to want to improve and want to perform better than the people to your left and right.
In the summer of 1999, he was off to West Point in New York, but it wasn't until 2 years later that DJ truly understood why he enlisted.
West Point Military Academy lies right on the Hudson River, and one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center actually just tracked and followed the Hudson River. You're at the premier military school in the world, and then you're watching the world unfold. Our graduation at West Point, the President of the United States gives our commencement speech and lays out the entire war plan for Iraq during your graduation. And you realize that you're not at a normal school.
DJ was assigned to Fort Lewis, Washington, where he led a platoon of 45 in the second wave of troops deployed to Iraq in the fall of 2004. On November 6th, he was defending an overpass in the northeast section of Fallujah.
An RPG came in and hit the cement pylon. So the majority of my injuries were from the shrapnel from that RPG hitting and then pieces of it breaking off. The head of the RPG broke off and went through my right leg. So I got shot about a half dozen times throughout the body. I got shot in both arms. And one of the more devastating injuries that I still deal with today is a piece of shrapnel went in through my right cheek, destroyed my entire upper mouth, upper jaw, and went out my left eye. So my eye was actually an exit wound, not an entry wound.
The devastation was immense, but at the time, it was all a blur.
I was conscious at the time that I got injured. So when I got hit, I remember a light switch went off. All I could see was pitch black. The audio went out, I couldn't hear anything. I remember feeling like I was floating through the air. And then all of a sudden the audio came back on and I could hear the sounds of the battlefield. I just remember one of my soldiers coming, hit their voice saying, "Oh my God, I think the lieutenant's dead." And then all of a sudden the pain switch went on and I felt the most excruciating pain I hope to ever feel in my life.
DJ woke up 1 month later from a drug-induced coma at Walter Reed Medical Hospital in Washington, D.C. His very first thought, getting back to action.
I felt like I had lied to all my soldiers. I felt like I had made this promise that I was going to be there, lead them through this thing called war.
Despite all his injuries, it was DJ's pride that was wounded the most. He may have been stubborn, but he was also determined.
I was an inpatient for a long time. I was an outpatient for 4 hours, which is as long as it took me to pack my bags, go to the airport in Washington, D.C., and fly back to my unit in Fort Lewis, Washington. I could barely walk, definitely couldn't run. The wounds were still pretty fresh by the time I showed up.
DJ had no interest in being a mascot or a symbol. He truly wanted to serve on the front lines. But the Army Medical Board said otherwise.
So the Army did this with me in 2005 in the summer and came back and said, "You know what, DJ, you're too broken. There's nothing you can do to contribute to the U.S. Army. You have to leave the Army." And I took personal offense to this.
He may have been offended, but he didn't accept it. For the next several years, DJ worked in Washington with the Pentagon, crafting new policies and laws to help wounded warriors like himself. But being a pencil pusher finally pushed DJ back to his original goal.
I was like, if I'm going to stay in the Army, I want to go do what I wanted to do in the first place, which is go back to the infantry and serve.
DJ quit his job, but not before getting encouragement from the Army's Chief of Staff.
He goes, go back to Fort Bunning and learn how to be an infantryman again, and we'll support you.
In January 2011, DJ rejoined his original unit in Afghanistan. 12 of the 45 soldiers from his first tour were still around.
And was able 7 months later to join them on a plane and bring them back from the combat zone back to their unit, which was in Germany. For me, that experience was kind of the closure that I needed.
DJ's Army career had come full circle. An individual quest had been fulfilled. Thoughts had turned into actions, which would guide his next step up the steep mountain of redemption.
Yeah, right?
When I was enlisted in my time at West Point, I spent a lot of time rock climbing. And that was kind of my balance in life, right? Yeah, you work hard and you need to play hard equally. And so for me, that was my balance.
During his time in Washington, DJ got involved with the nonprofit Paradox Sports, which helps disabled people participate in outdoor activities like rock climbing. The paradox is self-explanatory, but also deeply personal to DJ and other wounded warriors he encountered during his recovery.
Here, doctors and society and people around them would be telling them all the things that they can't do. And here we are rock climbing, which is something that most able-bodied people can't do.
During the year, DJ and others with Paradox hold climbing events across the country. It's a community atmosphere designed to help individuals maximize their potential.
Activities like rock climbing, there's nobody else to carry the load if I fail. So if I'm trying to rock climb to get to the top of something and I decide to only give 90% effort and I don't make it, my partner can't get me there.
From a personal standpoint, DJ's partner Tucker has been as solid as a rock. With a wife and new son at home and a future filled with all sorts of possibilities, DJ Skelton will have battles both personal and public for the rest of his life. But as The Art of War indicates, he already knows the result of those battles. It's something he'll continue to grapple with day after day.
I've served with far better people that should have come home and I shouldn't have. But that's not how life works out. So the best that I can do is to take the fact that I'm here today and figure out how to make it worth it. How make their sacrifices worth it, because I'm the one that got to come home.
All right, David, well done. Incredible story, incredible guy. And DJ is known nationally by a certain moniker, a certain name. What is that?
Yeah, a couple of national publications have referred to him as the most wounded commander in military history, and it's a moniker that he honestly doesn't like. For one, he's had more than 75 surgeries, so he understands why he has that moniker. He just personally doesn't like it because for him, there's no way to know if he's the most wounded commander, and second, it's not really something he wants to be known by. Every wounded warrior sort of has a personal journey, and he wants his to stay personal.
All right, and his military career is probably going to be ending soon?
Yeah, he lives in Monterey, California right now, plans to retire from the Army officially at the end of 2016. Doesn't really have a concrete plan after that, but as you saw, he has a new family, and so his life is moving in the right direction.
All right, thanks a lot, David Brown. Our thanks to Mike Dahm and Carlin Dupree and DJ Skelton. You can find this episode and all the episodes of Midco Sports Magazine on YouTube.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.